One of the things that we wanted to make sure we covered today, I think it's appropriate for the time of year that we're entering, the winter, and people are going to be thinking about how they want to grow in the spring, summer. And one way you can grow is by contract growing crops that will go to seed for people who sell seed. Can you talk a little bit more about that process, why it's important, how people can get involved?
Yeah, definitely, Diego. To put this in perspective, a long time ago, we used to have these small farms and small growers that produce their own seed and save their own seed. These days, most of the seed is grown wholesale and is sold retail. And there's very few small seed companies that they're out there, but a lot of them are a lot of seed companies, they just resell, or maybe they get varieties that can be easily bought and cheap and then sold for a profit. But a lot of people, farmers, gardeners, relying especially on hybrids, will need alternates because if, let's say, your favorite hybrid is gone and maybe you need some alternate, or there's other reasons for contract growing. If you're, let's say, you're a market farmer and you want to make some extra money, that's another way to make some extra money and also do some things. Or maybe someone near you can grow a variety that you'd like and you can grow a variety for them, but maybe you have extra seed and you want to sell that seed. So that's where the contract growing comes into place. For me, I feel that my growers, if possible, should grow and sell and then also contract grow as well. That way they can get to know the product really well and then also save it for seed. I run a little seed business called Cucumber Shop, and I cannot grow all the varieties that I need to grow. And so that is the reason why I contract grow. And I see there's a lot of small farmers out there, small growers that need a good, steady source of revenue. And that's one thing I feel that I can do is provide them on a small scale some revenue. So I'm talking about, for me, it's 50 to 100 plants. That's not a lot. We're talking like ounces to pounds, maybe some pounds, but we're not talking about tons of seed. So that's the scale that I work with. And I just lay it out there. For example, I tell people, I'll start at $10 an ounce. Make it really, this is going to be good as long as we get 90% plus termination, which most of the growers should. When you get, if you know what you're doing with growing plants, you should do that. And then I have this agreement that I send to them to look through. So I get their name, their address and stuff and put in the agreement. And then I send over like this agreement. It's like a contract, but it's not legally binding. But anyways, we can have this agreement and kind of tell them a little bit about myself and tell them, hey, we're going to work in this symbiotic relationship. If you work hard on this and make the seed grow well, and I get good seed from you and I pay you for that, and people grow this good seed, then I'm going to want to buy more, have you grow more seed. So it's this symbiotic relationship. One of the big things, one of the big problems with open pollinated in most every seed variety you get is maintenance. If people don't maintain it for what it should have. So I tell people several criteria that I'm looking for. For example, this one variety, I'm looking for, I pick four criteria. Hey, you need to grow this, but we're looking for a specific thing. So for example, this one variety, it's a dark cylindrical cucumber melon that has these kind of ridges to it, and it's not super dark, it's not super light, it's medium dark. But first thing I look for is plant vigor and health, and then the coloring, and then good texture, and then that regular cylindrical shape. And so then I have the growers, I send them these little twist ties that they can put on the better and the best ones, these gold twist ties for the best ones, and these purple twist ties for the better ones. And then they have their normal ones that I'll still pay them I'll still pay the full amount for whatever seed, as long as it's not diseased. But and then I also send them a marker. So once the fruit grows too big and they need to pull it off the vine, they can put better or best on there with a guard marker so that they no longer have to use the twist ties, because once you pull the fruit off, the twist tie is not going to stay on there. So that's how I do that. Go ahead.
Okay, so To sum this up and start, because I think there's a lot here, because this brings up
Yeah.
questions I have. You sell seed. You obviously
Yes.
can't grow it all, so you need people to contract grow for you. So you
Hmm.
reach out to farmers, gardeners, that type of thing, who want to grow anywhere between 50 to 100 plants of a given variety that you would presumably assign to them.
Right.
They grow it out, they sell you the seed. 50 to 100 plants, what's the rough space that takes up if somebody's growing that linear feet wise, if we were going to say, if you just plant them in a line?
I usually call that about half a row. So let's see here. That's, we're looking at 100 to 200 feet, putting a plant every other foot is what we're
Okay.
looking at. Yeah, and it really depends. There are some varieties that need a lot more room than that. And then there's varieties that could deal with a foot and a half. I've got these real compact varieties like the Tungo Buddy say that, yeah, it just needs maybe a foot and a half at its largest size, and then it'll be producing seed by then. Yeah.
So, not a ton of land. Somebody's not going to do it in an HOA community, most likely. They're not going to have enough space.
Right.
But for anybody with a serious garden, they probably have some room like that.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to do this. What are some things they need to think about in terms of ensuring genetic integrity if they're going to grow? So, like, you wouldn't want them to do these other things, or you want to make sure you're doing these things so it grows true to type.
So obviously the selection criteria that I already put out there. If, for example, they're a regular farmer and they're growing other melons somewhere, I'd really probably want a row or buffer of my melons that they'll probably just sell between that and whatever their other melons out in the field somewhere else. Otherwise, at least half a mile or some kind of a lot of flowering plants in between Cucumis mellow, or if I'm asking somebody to grow Cucumis sativus, between Cucumis sativus. I really try to make this easy for the grower. I give them the easiest varieties that produce the most seed, and those are the ones I contract grow first. And I take, let's say something has some bitter properties that need to be removed, or that there's something's polymorphic and it needs to be, I need to clean up a variety. I take those on myself. So I give my contract growers the very easiest things, and then I give them the selection criteria, and I talk to them about isolation and the importance of isolation. But generally speaking, the better ones are going to be obviously further. If that's ever an issue, then I talk to them about it, and I say, okay, we're also going to say that the better ones are going to be on the side away from the melons. If that is an issue, if there is other melons nearby somewhere, because we want to keep things as pure as possible. And also I send the growers a seed. I know this is half related with your question. I sell. I send them the seed and I pay for shipping both ways. So that just make it a little easier incentive wise, as long as they know how to select a box and put things in a box and stuff. And I have a lot of growers that have problems with even figuring out how to winnow and process the seed correctly. I can finish it up for them if they need to. But yeah, I do a lot. I'm like, I feel like I'm cradling a lot of these growers that I feel like, oh, if you're a market grower, you should know how to do some of this stuff. But some of them is just, they just need to be held by the hand. And I'm doing that while I'm trying to grow my own stuff.
Yeah, I can see that. It's new probably for a lot of farmers. Usually you're just selling well before the seed saving stage and
Right,
you're trying to grow something quality. Hey, I don't want to mess this up because you only get sometimes one shot per calendar year to do this.
right,
At $10 or so an ounce, a pound, 16 ounces, that's a few $1,000. That's not nothing at the end of
right,
the day for somebody. And I think there's also this pride, or there's something cool about I'm preserving a variety. I'm improving a variety. I'm helping more people get this out there. There is this whole that has to obviously matter to the person growing, but
right,
there are these intangibles, right, that you can get out of this to say, I took something that we wanted to add vigor to. If you grow 100 plants,
mhm.
what's just a rough off the top of your head, how many of those do you think are going to show increased vigor out of the 100?
Some of these varieties, they may have in the previous generation or two been grown with just 6 or 7 plants. Cucumis mellow, they don't have inbreeding depression really bad. So you can grow just a couple and they'll still be okay. That being said, like you say, if you have a large population, it does increase the vigor of the plants themselves. And so I'd say if we're talking about those that show high vigor when you're growing them, there'll probably be a good 20% that do. And then that, if that's one of the selection criteria that I'm looking for, that's usually like the first is the health of the plant, then that really helps. And I do ask people, I tell them expect 5 to 10% of the plants you're going to have to pull because maybe they're just dithering, or I have a zero tolerance for what am I thinking of? Diseases that are viral. Viruses, those plants have got to go. If you have anything that gets a virus, most of the muskmelons are pretty resistant to a lot of viruses, but there's some. And as soon as they get it, that any kind of disease that can be transferred to the seed, is that you've got to pull that so that that doesn't hurt me, and in turn doesn't hurt you because then later on I hear about it or whatever. And I also ask for like proof of the fact that they're growing it. So I'm like, hey, if I'm going to be paying you this, this is in my mind. You could just as easily buy some cheap seed somewhere and try to pawn that off on me kind of thing. So I've got to have proof along the way that you're actually growing some pictures and stuff. And this is called a community. I ask for communication. So as we go along, I need to be communicated with. That's part of why I'm paying you, is so that there's a learning curve. There's a lot of mistakes people make that they don't know. And so that's why I just try to either text or go through Messenger or whatever their preferred method of communication is, so that we can get it right and so that they can be paid in the end. Yeah.
Can you give me a 30-second seed saving from cucumbers or melons grown as cucumbers? Like, what's the process? We can dive into the full detailed version in a future episode, but what's the 30-second, here's how you save the seed?
Yeah, I'll start with melons and then go to cucumbers because there's just an extra step with Cucumis sativus, or a couple steps. Let's say you're growing one that's a melon or even a cucumber. With melons, they're going to just increase in size and they get pretty big, a lot of them comparative to when you pick it. For example, if we have a 1.5 inch wide cylindrical fruit, by the time it gets bigger, it may be 2 or 3 inches, 4 inches wide, and be half foot to a foot long. And same with the round ones. If you pick them when they're about 3 inches in diameter, they could be 8 inches wide. But it's not just the size with the melons, it's also they change color. With melons, they'll start to smell sweet. They may start to decay a little. They slip from the vine. That means that if you gently pull on the fruit, that it will pull loose from the vine, and you'll see that little belly button, any belly button shape on the fruit. So all those things are indicators. Then once you actually harvest the fruit, you have to be careful because even though in the wild they would still remain hot, it'd still be hot outside, the seed percentage of sprouting or germination decreases as they're exposed to the heat. And so you want to get them inside in the cool, dry. Cool, dry, they last longer. You just want to get the fruit to last as long as possible so that even after you pick the fruit, a lot of times it's still giving its energy to the seed, and the seeds are hardening up and plumping up. And so you want the seeds as heavy as possible. So then you have those fruit in there. And then as soon as they start to soften up, almost they're on the edge of decaying, you pull them, cut them open, you pull out the pulp in the seeds that surrounding the seeds, you rinse it out. You can do something, you can knead the seeds and the pulp with your hands. That will help a lot of that pulp to disintegrate. And then rinse it out again. You throw it in some water, all those seeds in the water and pulp in the water. And a lot of times what will happen is it just depends on the variety. Not every variety will the heavy seeds go to the bottom. Some varieties still have air pockets in the seed, and so they'll still float even though that they have plenty of vigor in the seed. So there's plenty good seed on top. So generally I use like a slotted spoon to get the top seeds, and then I pour out in the middle is generally all that pulp, and then on the bottom is a really high quality heavy seed, and then I rinse it out a couple times more, and then I put it on 10 by 20 trays that have these holes on the bottom, almost not netting, but like mesh looking trays. And I just dry them from there for several days. And I move them around so they get dried evenly. And I dry them inside. I don't dry them outside, even though, you could dry it faster outside. You just want to avoid that. And then I dry winnow it from there. The easiest way, if you have a small quantity of seed, is to put them in a big bowl and to just blow diagonally down in almost while you're shaking the bowl to move the seed in. All that really light seed will just fly right out, just be left with the heavy seed in there. And then, so that's the easiest way for melons. Now, for cucumbers, they won't grow quite as big beforehand. They will change color. They will slip from the vine. They won't have a great smell or anything. With melons, they'll smell sweet. With cucumbers, yeah. But then they can store for anywhere, it just depends upon the variety, they can store for anywhere between 1 and 4 or 5 months before they're ready to harvest for seed. So it just depends on the variety. You want to wait until they get soft, until you cut them open, pull out the seed. And then even after then, that seed, like tomatoes, may have that gel covering over it. And you'll have to put, if they have the gel covering over it and it doesn't come apart easily by kneading it, like we talked about earlier, then you're going to have to put in a glass jar to ferment a day or two, just depending upon the variety, and then just try again, keep kneading the gel, and as soon as the gel just falls apart, then you can rinse out the seeds and you're ready to dry it on the 10 by 20 trays. And then both melons and cucumbers, once it's all dried, label some Ziploc bags correctly and put the high quality seed in there. And jars is the best way to do it. So even if you put them in plastic bags, jars make the seed last a lot longer. Anything where you don't have a lot of air in there, a lot of circulation of air. And then I put them in the fridge, not in the freezer. Yeah, there.
Right on. So not too complicated for people that are interested in doing this as part of your program and get their seeds. How can they get in touch with you?
j@cucumbershop.com or j@cucumberseedshop@gmail, either way, or just go on my website, fill out a contact form, whatever. I try to, contact people. If you're in the East Coast in a real wet area, you almost need to grow in like a high tunnel, because I found that melon varieties, they will decompose real fast if they're left in wet ground. Those don't do as well unless you're growing in a high tunnel. But if you're in a relatively dry place, it's probably going to be really easy for you to grow for me. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And then let's see. Okay. Yeah, I ask people if they take any pictures or do any videos, that because I have very specialty seeds that I send them and work with, I ask that they don't share those out with other people, specifically just because people steal pictures all the time of varieties they don't have and then sell seed as if they own it, but they don't. And then, I just isolation. Yeah. A lot of people don't understand, if the seed isn't heavy enough, then it's not going to do any good. And so I let people try germinating the seed themselves, a small population or selection for themselves before they send it to me, so that once they try germinate, I try germinate. Hopefully it's around the same, so they can trust that I'm giving them a fair price for whatever. And then I ask for people not to send me seed when the temperature's over 90 degrees, because then if it happens to be in a warehouse or something where it gets hot or whatever, then the seed could go bad. And I just want to keep that from happening. And then I tell people, look, that's great that you're saving the seed, that you're sending it to me, but if there's any that's really light, that's not going to count towards the weight. Because, and I really try to have growers say, hey, how would you like to get the seed? Would you like the seed to be all gross and not well? How would you like to have seed that you grow? Would you like it to be clean or gross? Would you like to have all these issues? Or I try to be nice about it, but I'll at the same time talk to them about it that way as well. And then for me, I prefer organic, but obviously I'll pay people a little extra if they're certified, but if not, that's fine. Yeah, but that's for me personally. But I think what's to wrap it up, the important thing is we're losing a lot of our seed diversity, and market growers can often have a product that stands out in the market, especially if you have farmers market, if you have CSA kind of things like that. You can stand out with some of these unique products that are actually really high quality. A lot of my varieties are high quality, and at the same time make some pretty good money for your efforts. And if every market grower were to save some of their own seeds, then the stuff we saw happen in 2020 and some of the stuff we may see in the future, when hybrids are not there, you have something to fall back on. You have something that can sustain you. And so why wouldn't you make life easier for yourself and for others by increasing the diversity of seed and supporting your own farm with something you can rely on that's going to be there when you need it.
Yeah, love the mission of it. Grow some, sell some of the stuff that you grow, save some of it for seed, and look to improve something and preserve. So people who want to learn more about this, we can reach out to you, jay@cucumbershop.com for more details.